Welcome back to another episode of Minimum Rage, the podcast hosted by two 20-something-year-olds raging on about our past minimum wage jobs. Today, our guest is Dr. Frances Mei Hardin. She is an otolaryngologist, also known as an ENT doctor based in Nashville, Tennessee, and she is also the host of Promising Young Surgeon, a podcast on the Influent Network and the Hurrdat Network. So welcome, Miss Frances Mei.
Woo! Thank you so much for having me and for the kind intro. You know, as you were talking, I was like, I think I'm a perfect fit for you guys, and here's why. Because my whole brand is maximum rage. Like if I had to do like a accompanying show to this show, I'd be like maximum rage. And we'd be the people showing up at like the Wreck-It room.
Yeah.
Just like beating the shit out of. Yes. Yes.
I love that.
That's the vibe that I bring to everything that I show up at.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, what are we smashing here?
Well, honestly, we need that. And this podcast alone, I think we forget the rage part.
Yes. And it's the most exciting part. It's the part that I like crave the most of it.
Right. So hopefully you can bring us back on track and bring in the raginess.
Yeah.
Yes. Let me be, your mentor here.
Yes.
Like that makes perfect sense because I have known you for like quite some time now, Grace, like maybe almost a year. And I've never detected really any rage in you. So this is good. Like you're gonna learn from a professional today.
Perfect. Well, let's start out with a background for you because you had a very non-traditional growing up. Can we start off with boarding school? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, sure. So I have to say that the reason that my childhood and upbringing was so unconventional is primarily because I didn't have any friends. So then now suddenly like your whole calendar's open and a lot of like your extra resources and time are freed up. And so you just do like a ton of weird shit. Like I went to boot camp in Port Hueneme when I was an 8th grader. That was as a U.S. Naval Sea Cadet. I went to space camp also back in grade school. And I moved out at 13, never to return home again. And that was to go to the Illinois Math and Science Academy. It's a 3-year high school. So you can either be a freshman anywhere and apply and get in. And then you like finish your freshman year of high school at home. And then you move in there to become a sophomore. That being said, out of our class of like 200, and every class, there were about 40 shmen. And a shmen is a sophomore freshman. And I was one of those freaks of nature, which is where you graduate 8th grade and you become a 10th grader. Like overnight,
wow.
You just move on to campus and you're a 10th grader.
That is
I'm sorry. I'm still speechless over the fact that you left home, never returned at the age, was it 13 you said?
Yeah, 13.
That is like that's crazy. Also the amount of camps and the diversity and the places that you went as well. You lived 30 lives, it seems like, before you were even 15.
Yeah, I mean, again, I can't emphasize enough.
Yeah.
None of those lives made me extremely well adjusted, which I'm sure we'll get to like later in my career and professional life. But yeah, I mean, they were great experiences, but I have these memories of like, for instance, sophomore year, there were these girls who lived across the hall who I just like really looked up to, and they tolerated me. And so I'd like always be over in their room. They kind of had a quad, and I'd be like sitting on the upper bunk, just housing a sleeve of Oreos and just listening. I'd be like, and they're all gossiping back and forth because they're talking about guys from their old high school. They're talking about guys at this high school. Again, I'm just vibing. It's just me and my Oreos. And I'm like trying to pick up from context clues. I was trying to figure out what a blowjob was from context clues. And at one point I had to interrupt to be like, hey guys, like quick question. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I mean, I have a general sense, like I'm not a dummy, but I do think that there was a lot of hilarity and like jarring social dynamics that ensued as a result of all that.
Yeah, that's awesome that you had a group of older girls to look up to. And so were there other 13-year-olds around you, or was it more older?
there were just, in that Shmen group. And what's so funny is that my sophomore year roommate, she was the only one close to my age at all. And I think that, she and I were about 2 months apart in age. And what's interesting about that is that I was the dumb jock in high school. I was like 5'11". I mean, I was probably 5'10" by that time, 5'11". I'm 6 feet now. And I was on the volleyball team. I played varsity basketball. Even though I had a baby face, like I got by okay because I just physically was bigger. She, however, looked 13, like petite baby face 13.
Mhm.
And so people did treat her differently, whereas I kind of got to, again, live the extremely glamorous life of like the dumb jock on campus.
Did it feel weird moving away from your parents and your family
Mm.
at such a young age?
Well, I am an only child, and I stayed, obviously very close to my parents. Like we talked on the phone every day. They were at every single volleyball game. So I kind of think it was the right amount of distance for us
Yeah.
to have, which is just maybe physically like 40 miles.
Okay. Okay, so it's not like moving away to college in some instances and you're like states away.
Right.
I do have to interject and ask. You said you were 5'11" volleyball player. Were you by chance middle setter? Were you?
Yes,
Like,
I was a middle hitter. Yep.
Middle hitter. Yeah, middle hitter. Sorry.
Yep.
I get that from you. That's definitely, yeah, that's awesome.
Wow, that's like so flattering. Wait, I love that. I still give that vibe.
Yeah,
'Cause I
totally.
kinda
You
think
said
that's
it.
like a little bit of a hot girl sports position.
Yes, it is. I'm telling you, like, I can't really, it's the only position where if someone says they play volleyball, I'm like, I can sniff it out if they were a middle hitter. Because I never had the height. I always wanted to be middle hitter because I thought they were the coolest.
Oh my gosh.
I did.
This is the nicest thing anyone
Yeah.
said all year. This is big for me.
Well, I'm glad I could bring that to the table.
Before we started recording, Joslyne and I were talking, and we were saying how you taught piano lessons at a very young age as well. And so, what age did you start doing that?
Yeah, so I was like 11 and it was the summer, and basically through like the Chinese Mom Network in Chicago, we met this other family where they had like, a 4 and 6 and 7-year-old who were all going to learn to play piano, and they got assigned to me. So
Wow.
it was like a great gig because I mean, I did teach all three of them as kind of like a batch class, and I think I made like $20 an hour, because that's 3 kids.
Yeah.
And this is the one of the worst things about me as a kid is that at the end of the summer I had like saved up a decent chunk of money and I used it to buy a new piano bench. Abysmal, despicable. That's like embarrassing for my life and soul, but that's what I spent the money on.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, my Tchaikovsky books will like have a new home. Like,
I find it so like wow, because I just can't help but think about like the things I was doing at that age, and it was just like rotting my brain. I don't even think I was like a conscious being, honestly, at that age. So it's like so mind blowing and impressive that teaching one kid alone, but teaching a group of 3, that's impressive. That's awesome.
I will say that like Chinese kids at that age are pretty like willing students, I'm not saying,
Sure.
don't think of like 3 of the most rambunctious like crazy kids that they were like
Right.
extraordinarily
Yeah.
well disciplined.
Yeah.
They just sat there quietly.
Whoa.
Yeah. I would go back and teach them today, honestly.
Really?
Oh. See, I think I was the opposite, but I was also raised by white people, so I don't think it was the same.
The discipline is just not the same. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I'm Chinese, so I'm not being a hater, just literally.
Yeah.
There is something different about, I think, how you behave in class,
Mhm.
or how I see white people behaving in class, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing is when I said that, I was speaking from me. I was
Yeah.
awful. I was like,
Yeah, you were like, you don't want to teach me
Yeah,
piano
yeah.
when I was 7. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't want to teach white kids how to play piano at 7. Like, we're on the same page here.
yeah, like, I mean, like, even like not teaching, just like babysitting, it's like, it's a lot. It's a lot. So yeah, but that context, I get it. It makes more sense.
No, like honestly, shout out to these kids. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they are now all pre-med and in medical school themselves.
That's
Like they're just
amazing.
little
Of course.
hustlers.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Of course. That's incredible.
That
I
is.
think at age 12, I was quitting piano because I never practiced and it got too hard. So that's where I was on the
Yeah.
spectrum. And then you, Joslyne, you said that you were playing Club Penguin at age 12?
Yeah, I was like online. I was like Club Penguin, telling my friends, lying to my friends, telling them like I had met Katy Perry on Club Penguin. Like I
Oh,
like I was.
good lie too, though.
How were they gonna check me? They literally, and I had to keep it up the facade. I was faking phone calls with her. It was good. It was a good lie.
That's
but yeah.
amazing.
Uh,
Well,
not
I don't want to date myself too much, but I was playing Neopets.
Oh
You know.
yeah, is that the thing? You like take care of them and then they like.
Oh my God,
That's
no,
a
that's a
Tamagotchi.
Tamagotchi, and that predates me. So thank you.
I've heard of the name Neopet, but I don't.
Neopets, it's a website. It's like
Oh.
the same vibe as what my understanding
Oh.
is Club Penguin is. Like
Yeah,
Neopets,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
a little
sure.
world.
Yeah.
You go to neopets.com. They didn't used to block it on school browsers because I was there at like the advent of the internet in schools. And yeah, you got a pet. You could get a pet for your pet. Play games to earn Neo points. Like again,
get it,
this
yeah.
sounds exactly like whatever you were
Yeah.
doing with
It's
Katy
like a-
Perry in the club.
In the club.
Sounds like a
In the club.
Webkins. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's giving Webkins. Okay.
Oh yeah, I love Webkins as well. This is fun. Did you ever play, Frances? Did you ever play Pop Tropica?
No.
Was that no? Okay, cool. That was like the only gaming thing that like our schools ever allowed. Because I know you said they didn't block the Neopets. I feel like schools were very pro Pop Tropica when I was in school, at least.
Yeah. Again, and
same
I'm sure
thing.
this is clear to everyone. We are like a full generation separated from one another. So fuck those stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Regardless, still very different upbringings, both of us, and I'm still jaw on the floor from the fact that you had the competency. Well, not even had the competency to like teach at that age, but still, like that's amazing.
I was a very serious kid. Like,
Yeah.
you know, people find me to be a serious adult, and this
Mhm.
is me in like my most lit, smiley era. So you can
I
kind of
love that.
imagine
Yeah.
like the stern, militaristic child
Yeah.
that I was.
Was that just
Yeah.
because of how you were raised, or is that just your personality?
Yeah, I think both. I don't know how
Yeah.
to really untangle those two from each
Yeah,
other.
yeah,
But
yeah.
even as an only child, I grew up with my two parents and my two grandmothers. So like the average age of
Whoa.
the person who I spent time with was like
Yeah.
70.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then you also mentioned that you served at a Catholic church when you were little or younger. So I personally have trauma doing that in my personal life. But how was that for you?
No, what happened, Grace?
Oh my God, it's not even that deep. I just like didn't like the girls in my grade because they were all like, this won't mean anything to you, but they were from like the Millard West schools, the rich schools, the
Oh,
white
shit.
schools.
Not
Mm.
Miller
And-
West. I can get on really quick. I'm like, fuck Miller
Wait,
West.
are you?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm not from there. You know I'm not from there.
I know. But,
She's picking up. She's picking
yeah,
up.
Just a
they were-
good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I just like hated the whole experience having
You
to like
didn't love like the
being
Catholic
forced-
mass.
no, like just being forced to like show up every week and like having to do the candles during service because that's
Mm.
also like a social anxiety thing. I was like, I hated
The
doing
only
that.
job. That's the
Like,
primary
but like you
role.
had to do it.
Yeah.
Everyone had to have a turn or like doing communion or anything. So that's my trauma.
I'm unfamiliar with the job itself because I grew up like in a Baptist church. What's the job? And I am imagining you having to like light candles in front of like a group of like 200 people.
For me, it was like the candles were as tall as me. Like they were big.
Yeah.
And it's like part of the opening and closing of the sermon.
Mhm.
So like everyone is watching you. And so for me, that was not fun.
Yeah, that's a lot of pressure.
But yeah. But for you, Frances Mei, what was that like?
That's true. Honestly, I didn't have bad like public speaking, public candle lighting fear. Like, I did want to be like a Disney Channel original movie star of some kind. So I feel like maybe that was my time to shine. Like, I was like, everyone look over here.
Yeah.
Plus also, again, this goes back to I didn't have anything else to do. But an altar server, yeah, you have to process in, you have to process out, you got to do the candles. I mean, you just have to sit off to the side during all the meat of the mass. I was also in bell choir at the same time. I was the captain. I had to lead the bell choir. I mean, I was doing at times like 3 to 4 masses per weekend. 5:30 p.m. Saturday, 9 a.m. Sunday, 10:30 a.m. Sunday, noon Sunday. Like, I was just bragging the other day to somebody who was like, yeah, I don't go to mass anymore. And I was like, I have gone to enough mass just up front to cover me, I think, for my whole life. Like, I'm actually good. If you're hitting 4 masses per weekend, mathematically, like, I never have to go again.
You got
and
your
I'm
reps
still
in.
covered.
You are saved. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's and then you said you only ever got paid for ones that were like for funerals or for weddings.
Yeah, no, you weren't paid for the other ones.
Oh, and it's like
funerals would be like $20 easy. One wedding I got $100. That was awesome. And this is just cash. That's like a very classy move, you know, like the groom's best man, whatever, like slipped us $100 cash at the end.
That's nice. Awesome. That is really sweet. That's crazy though. Did you ever have any bad experiences working as I feel like, I don't know, that environment there has to be some kind of chaos.
Altar serving?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like,
oh my God, I
drama
cannot tell
in the church.
That, and you know, like, I'm here for it. All workplace drama, the tea. I'm so here for it. I don't think I've ever seen less than in my altar serving years. I mean, it's not even close. And, you know, I'm trying to think back. I'm like, well, at least like were my crushes also altar serving? They were not. They were out partying and playing like 7 Minutes in Heaven or whatever. I was just, it would just be like other weird kids.
Yeah.
We just altar served together. Everyone minded their own business. I will say that in like bell choir, that was always very, very litigious because people are fighting over like the bells, the ones that are associated with maybe like the most honor and the most playtime.
Yeah.
And so there was always like a power struggle within the bell choir. But again, I can't even make up one interesting thing that ever happened to altar serving. Like one person would mess up, you know, snuffing out a candle, but like you forget it as soon as it happens. Because like they weren't cute anyway.
Yeah.
Like just
no one had eyes on them. The power struggle in the bell choir is hilarious to me, and I would watch a TV show on that premise alone. That's really funny.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was crazy. Like we were crazy up there, and we were in that like overhang rafters thing of like the whole church. So I mean, like, I'm kind of surprised no one tried to push another kid like off the rafters and just kill them to take their spot and like move up a bell.
Yeah.
Were the people in the bell choir, were they around your age as well, or were they like adults?
Oh my gosh, no adults. I was like middle school aged the whole time. So, you know, that was probably like 5th through 8th grade for me. And I was like the de facto leader. But again, couldn't keep people in line there. They were not like the obedient Asians. It was all white. It was all like Irish Catholics, which those people are insane.
They are. My cousins.
I'm half Irish Catholic too. So
okay. You very personal experience as well.
Yeah, I'm mostly just commenting about me. Like the Irish Catholic parts of me are the maximum rage.
Okay.
I love that.
All right, so let's move on to what your very first job was that you consider.
Yeah, I took, you know, a gap year after college and before medical school, but that was more of like a research position. When I think of like really, this is true for a lot of doctors and surgeons, but like their first job is just being a resident. Like they finished college and they finished medical school and then they go on to do a residency in X or Y or Z. And that's like the first time that they're just making a regular salary and like showing up to work.
Okay. And you mentioned that some of them don't even get paid the full minimum wage.
Correct, correct. This is a very depressing exercise. I know a lot of people who have done it, but they will take their annual salary and they'll plug in like, hey, I'm working 95 hours a week, and it doesn't meet minimum wage. Like, I think
Wow.
in the state I was in, minimum wage was like $13. And anyway, when I do the math on like my hours and my pay, it was like $11 an hour. And it
Mhm.
literally would just crush your spirit because you'd be asleep, you're already sleep deprived, you're at home, you're asleep, and you get a page at like midnight. And it's like, you got to come in. This person, like, I remember one time it was a guy from jail. He was taking apart like a CD player to make like a makeshift tattoo gun. Like, usually you'll use the
Oh,
parts from in there to do this.
Whoa.
So they're constantly like moving parts around. So he had this little needle basically from it in his mouth, like in between his teeth, and he was like working on it. Then somebody came by abruptly, like a jail guard, like came up, and it startled him, and he aspirated it literally like into his trachea. And so anyway, you're struggling, like you're barely getting by as a resident, and then you get this midnight call that's like, yeah, they aspirated a foreign body. It's like some again, a convoluted story. It's like
Yeah.
some piece of a unapproved music player, and you have to go in, you have to see the patient in the emergency room, then you have to call your senior resident and you have to tell them the whole story. They will cuss you out because now it's like 1 a.m. and they're like,
mhm.
don't ever contact me again. Then they'll say, but obviously we have to take this out, so book the operating room. You'll book the operating room. They'll contact the attending. Everyone will come in. You have to get the whole OR team in. Might go to the operating room, like be in the room at 1:45 or just even 2 a.m. Because this isn't like an emergency. This is an urgent type of case.
Mhm.
There's like different
Mhm.
categories. So now it's 2 a.m. You're still at the hospital. Um, you know, now you're in the operating room and you do the case and you extract this like foreign body. It really did
Mhm.
get aspirated. Like, there's not a different way. You have to get that removed for the person.
Yeah.
And we do that, and then by 3, that person's like done in post-op. You're writing the operative note, you're like doing some discharge stuff for them, and maybe at like 3:30 you're finishing up, maybe 4, right?
Mhm.
And then rounds sometimes are like at 5. So you'll just be like, I'll just go and eat like 6 bags of Ruffles maybe to pass the
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
And then
Whoa.
you have your full shift.
Yeah, and then you have your regular day. No, like regular
Wow.
day, rounding at 5 a.m., cases start at 7, and you leave at maybe 6 p.m. the next night. And so obviously when you do the math, like, I just remember thinking with that specific case, like, I remember taking this foreign body out of his trachea and being like, I'm being paid, like $8 an hour to do
Yeah.
this right now. Like, this is not it.
Yeah. Wow. I'm just like, first of all, that story is absolutely insane, but also just like the process in order to get to that point and all the steps that like fall on your shoulder, your responsibility to pick up and do. I also have a question. This is more so my lack of understanding of how residency works. Is
Mhm.
it like you spend like times in different units? So like, was this just like, I don't know, or if it's just like one part of the hospital
Yeah,
that you spend time
it does
in?
depend maybe a little bit on like what you do. Like, for
Okay.
instance, somebody does a pediatrics residency. They're going to do like some ICU rotations, some like
Mm.
maybe labor and delivery, like newborn stuff, and then maybe like peds outpatient clinic. For instance, like, so I did an ENT residency. So
Okay. Okay.
no,
Yeah.
it was ENT and the team's work
Mhm.
the whole time.
Okay.
We obviously, but like, we had patients who were in the ICU and we had
Yeah.
to go see them in there. So we did
Okay.
a lot of work like in every part of the hospital.
Mhm.
It could also be like a patient was getting their chemotherapy infusion for a cancer, like in the
Mhm.
cancer center. And then they had airway swelling, like suddenly they can't breathe. That's
Mm.
also ENT. Like, we would just kind of
Yeah.
go anywhere where like airway emergency coverage as well, things like that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That helped me clarify things.
Yes.
Is it difficult? Well, I mean, like, you've done so much to get to that point, but like, I mean, adapting to these situations in different environments, or is it just like you've been doing this so much, like your brain, you automatically know the next steps to take?
I am good at compartmentalizing, and I'm good at staying cool in an emergency, like in an airway emergency. I'm good at handling those situations. What was really brutal at this job was the interpersonal relationships,
Really?
because ENT is a small department too, though. So there were like 11 residents, like across 5 years. So there's very few of us doing the work that maybe like 20 residents should be doing. Like there's
Yeah.
a extreme amount of work. Plus, like we got a ton new attendings. Like the area became more populated over the years that I was there. So just like more and more work, same, the still very small number of people. And like, no offense, but objectively, the personalities of these people, myself included, are kind of unhinged. Like, no, I don't know a huge number of like well-adjusted surgeons.
Yeah.
For sure, not even doctors, but for sure not surgeons. Like, I think that surgery attracts a specific egotistical psychopath.
Yeah, that's so funny.
No offense, again. Like,
No, that's that. Are there like specific maybe things that come to mind or instances that happen, like discourse between you and the other residents that you can think of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, like, I posted about this the other day online, and there was like actually a really big response. People were like, oh my God. Because when I learned how to drain peritonsillar abscesses, this is me now as like a much younger resident, I'm just learning. And peritonsillar abscesses, super common, definitely in college age students, and we were in a college town. Peritonsillar abscesses are where you get an abscess. It's like in the tonsil region. And if it's over, let's say a 1.5 centimeter cutoff, some people use a 2 centimeter cutoff, but let's say 1.5, you need to open it. It needs an incision and drainage. Like it has to be cut open. And I remember it was this kid, he was like in his early 20s, again, some college kid, he just got sick. He got like strep throat, didn't treat with antibiotics in time, turns into an abscess. Now he's in the emergency room. And the resident like barely numbed him. And, just quick shot, like a quick numbing shot, and then just stabbed it with an 11 blade, which is a type of scalpel, and then started like opening it up with a curved Kelly clamp, which is an instrument. But like, I mean, that would be, I say this as somebody with a low pain tolerance. Like I would pass out. I really think if somebody did that to me.
Yeah.
So I'm watching it. I'm kind of like cringing. I was like, oh, and literally this kid is crying.
Yeah.
Like he starts sobbing. I mean, he's like, and the resident doesn't even take a beat. Like he doesn't even pause, and he starts laughing at him, like in his face, like that kid's awake, like and I'm just standing back there and I'm like, oh my God. And I drain PTAs all the time in practice. Like that's something we do in clinic. There are just nicer ways to do it. Like I'll spray hurricane spray and give that a few minutes. That's a topical anesthetic. Then we do the needle, and I can get a really good thorough numbing with the needle and stuff. But again, I say all that as someone who hates needles for me, and I have a very low pain tolerance. So I really try to like make people experience these things as painlessly as possible. But I do think that the like laughing in the face of pain,
insane.
That is like
crazy.
I know, but he's he's a good surgeon. I think people would say that, but like I don't know that people would be like, oh, really good person, but a good surgeon, yes.
Yeah. Wow.
That's crazy that no one had addressed that type of behavior. Even like when they were in school or whatever, if they've behaved like that, no one ever called them out and be like, that is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Or maybe they have and he just didn't care.
No. I'd say that's like top-down behavior. That was like that type of culture and behavior was at every level. That's why no one was like, oh, there's something wrong with that.
Oh,
they were like, there's nothing wrong with that.
They probably saw someone else do it.
Totally. And I think that like, even if I had reported that to the department, I'm sure nothing would have happened other than that somehow I get in trouble, and like they would not have taken issue with that. Because I know that person was reported to the department for like a variety of, types of concerns. But the other thing about residency that I think people don't realize is just how much you're like, it's, shit rolls downhill. And in the hospital, that is residents. Like nurses are unionized, and they typically have a boss who will back them. Certainly medical students are protected by their med school and dean and things like that, better than residents are. So for instance, if a case is like running late, and it could be running late because like the hospital's backed up or the room didn't get cleaned in time or, transport hasn't come, then we would go get the patient. Like I would literally sprint to where the patient was in the ICU, unlock their bed, and physically just start pushing them to the OR. Because it's like, if I don't get them there on time, it's my head. Like I'm
Yeah.
gonna catch these hands. Like,
Yeah.
you will just do that type of stuff. There were issues where we had one attending needed like really super specialized equipment that was always like, it was never quite like there on time. It was never getting in on time.
Mhm.
And I remember we had this case about to roll to the OR, and the attending basically was like, you better fucking find that equipment. Like the company, the medical tech company said that they mailed it last week. So it's here somewhere.
Yeah.
I spent like 20 minutes down in the mailroom trying to like look through boxes and be like, they're going to kill me if I don't find this like little object out in here.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's so much pressure.
Yeah, I'm like getting like secondhand, like what? How long were you in residency for?
5 years.
Wow, that's so intense.
And then at the same time, you have to pay for living wherever it is that you're based, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they probably help you find locations, right? To live.
Oh, some programs do. Mine didn't. But like if you are in New York City or something like that, sure.
Yeah.
Like there are places that will do subsidized residency housing,
Okay.
which
Yeah.
of course I'm sure is like the Terror Dome.
Right. I'm just thinking you have to pay for like rent. If you have
Mhm.
kids, you have kids, gas, car payments, all of that, and you're not even getting paid minimum wage.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
working insane hours.
And like people's lives are in your hands. Yeah, like
Yeah.
making a mistake could be a catastrophic loss of life, big deal.
Mm-hmm. Were there sorry, Grace, I cut you off.
No, it's okay.
I was just gonna say, were there ever times as a resident that you ever felt like, did you ever speak up to the person that was like authority over you or whatever, where you felt like they were making a bad call and you maybe spoke up?
Fortunately, in terms of like the person above me making bad clinical decisions, no, again, thankfully, I mean, because I guess I would have, like, I think in general,
Mm.
I am pretty vocal if I think something clinically is not right.
Mm-hmm.
But it all was much more like this behavioral stuff, like much more
Yeah.
than nebulous. Like, and I'll use the example of one time where the senior resident was screaming at a different resident on rounds. So
Mhm.
we're all on rounds. Again, this is now like 5:45 a.m. Everyone's just like trying to get their business done, get all the orders in, see all the patients. And we're walking as a group of like 5. There was even a med student with us that day. And anyway, the senior was just, we got in the elevator and the senior was railing on this junior resident. He literally was like, you are so fucking ugly. I don't want to see your face. Like, I don't know why you're here. I don't want to see your ugly face. Go stand in the corner and go face the corner. And literally in this like tiny elevator that like barely fits 4 or 5 people comfortably, that person went and stood in the corner, like face in the corner, and you could hear him like sniffling and crying. And, it's crazy because none of us said anything. I mean, I would have been very afraid for myself. Like, I don't think that that's okay. But there's also this other true, like, psychological warfare that can come up in residency because, like, I also have to live with the fact that I didn't say anything in that scenario.
Mhm.
Like, I don't think that that's right. I'm not, like, proud of that person.
Mm-hmm.
I think that I have some compassion for her. Like, I was just personally really scared. And if you interrupt the person who's bullying, like that vitriol will be turned on you.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever catch any heat, like at all, during your residency, like in that way? Regardless of,
I mean, people didn't tell me that I was so ugly that they like couldn't look at me and then made me go stand in the corner. Thankfully, like that specifically didn't happen because I would probably not recover super well from that. So not that specifically, but no, in terms of, again, like, this one time, in terms of like me catching heat, yes, just like too many instances to count. You just like turn off your emotions and you drink about it. Like
Right.
I was, like if I wasn't on call, I would just go home and drink like vodka waters until I went to sleep.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was like horrible.
Yeah.
But as a specific example of that, like when I was a junior, again, very new, like a junior, there were these post-op labs, parathyroid hormone type of stuff that all needed checked that evening. I was not on call, so I signed it all out to the person who was on call. That person did not do it, which is okay. I mean, he was like seeing other stuff, but he didn't do it. So that means that like the medication that we had to like start, it got started first thing in the morning. Like I saw at 5 a.m., like, oh shit, this didn't get done. So like no harm whatsoever came to the patient. It just like definitely you lose style points for that.
Yeah.
It could have been like
Mhm.
the lab came back several hours before, fine.
Mhm.
But not a big deal or anything like that, I would argue. Anyway, the attending the next day freaked out at me. Literally came to me. So the clinic was about to start at 1. So I was sitting in that attending's clinic, just like, sat there from 12:30 to 1, just doing paperwork on the computer. And a couple minutes before 1, that attending was like, hey, that medication didn't get started until this morning and not last night when the labs came back. What was that about? I had done the case with them the day before. So I was like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. Like I signed it out to the night team. I think they were swamped. I put it in the second I saw it this morning. And the attending just lit into me. They were like, wow, I'll never trust you with my patients again. They were like, I don't care what the night resident did or didn't do. You're the surgeon on that case. So that's 100% on you. And it sounds like I just can't trust you. It sounds like you're not able to like get things done that need to be done. I just can't trust you. This was like, I was 1 year into residency when they said all this. And by the way, because I think it's relevant, the rules change every day and the rules change depending on who you are. Because like there were tons of other scenarios where this happened in residency. And like if the attending likes the person that did the case and they don't like the person who was covering that night, the person who was covering that night who missed the labs and didn't put the medication in, they're going to get chewed out. There's kind of like a million different ways that you can justify screaming at and humiliating whoever you don't like. So in that specific case, I remember like I left clinic crying. I literally I hid in a back bathroom. I cried for like 4 minutes. I called my boyfriend, now husband. I was like, it was so fucking crazy. This attending just went off on me for this. I was like, at 12:59, I stopped crying. I washed my face. I went back out to clinic, started seeing their patients at 1. And again, then that would be like 1 to 5.
Wow. You can do it with a broken heart. I'm just saying. That's
yeah.
Is that
I know a lot of people
Taylor Swift
posted that and they were like, she made this for like people who work in healthcare.
Yeah.
Yeah. For you, are you an overthinker to the point where you clock out, you leave work, you're done, and then you're like, oh wait, I didn't do something? Or like, does your brain work that way?
Almost, but this actually ties back to kind of like the core rage issue, which is that no, I'm pretty good about not forgetting stuff. That doesn't happen to me very frequently.
Okay.
But I won't forget about work. Like I don't forget the beefs. That's what I have a problem with. Even me in the work, like even me in the clinical work or like whatever, I'm like, okay, like I'm not at the hospital. Like don't bother me about that. But the beefs keep me up at night. Like that's what like I can't separate. And it came to a point in residency where like either I was at the hospital working or I was not at the hospital venting about work or like venting about people that I worked with who behaved abominably and I was too angry to like even function.
Do you have, so I mean, where you are now looking back, do you have like any advice or like, I mean, if there's like people that are going through that now, like how, I mean, you manage by venting and all that stuff, but like, I mean, how would you handle that kind of stress now? Or like, what's like advice for people maybe going through that?
Yeah, I would handle it totally differently. And like, honestly, I think that this is relevant for like people who are residents right now, but honestly, like probably any professional. Certainly all of the like really competitive professions where there's like that workplace culture that's kind of like the rat race, it's very relevant. But I do think for any professional, it's kind of like when I learned dialectic behavioral therapy and like distress tolerance skills. I mean, again, look at what DBT teaches.
Yeah.
Distress tolerance, emotional regulation, interpersonal effectiveness, and mindfulness. Like that has really been what like has changed my life. Because now I do feel like, sure, occasionally do I take a beef home with me? Occasionally. But honestly, not anywhere near like the 100% rate that I was doing that in the past. And I do think that it's just about, I didn't know who I was back then. I did not know who I was. Like outside of being a resident and outside of being an ENT surgeon, I didn't have like another identity that kept me sane or kept me grounded. Like I do think that people who have those things, they do better. Like, or even some who have like families at home, they kind of stay focused on the family and they can like keep the main thing, you know? But I didn't, because this was my main thing. And so then when it went haywire, I just, you know, again, became like too enraged to function.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think like, I'm just thinking about even now, it's like kind of separating the two and like picking your battles and choosing like what's worth like bringing home or what's worth just leaving there and letting it just be that. But
totally. And I think that you can choose. Like that's
Yeah.
the important lesson is like you can choose. Yes, I had to do a lot of therapy and habit building to get like that space for the response. Like, okay, somebody says something totally insane to me. I have 0.5 seconds to just be like, do I care enough about this? The answer is usually no. And my husband, he really helps me a lot because one question that he started asking like just the last year plus of residency is that I'd come home and if I did have a beef, right, I'm like, this person is just out of their goddamn mind. And I'd just be going off and I'd be like, you know what? I should report them. Like I should let like whoever's above them like be aware that this is how they carry themselves in the workplace. I think it's so unprofessional. I think it's so whatever. And he would be like, is this worth having a meeting about to you? Yes or no? Because like this inevitably, this could turn into some kind of a meeting or like, you know, you bring up a beef, you formally report a beef, fine. It'll turn into some kind of meeting. And that has helped me so much, just that single question. Because it's like anytime something's bothering me, it's like, does it bother me enough that I'm willing to have a meeting with admin about it? And it's like, for sure not.
Yeah.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
And that's true in every workplace. Again, that's not just healthcare. It's kind of like, you know, that's fine. You can report whatever you want to your bosses, but how much investment are you willing to put?
Right. That's like the idea of before replying back to an email in a petty way. Just hold on, maybe think about it.
Yeah.
And I have to do that all the time. I'm like, I'm so mad right now, but and like my circumstance is way different.
Yeah.
But no, I get that.
I saw this tweet I loved this morning, which was like, my new email signature is just, quote, apologize to me, comma. Best ever.
I saw one that was like, you know how you say, I hope this email finds you well or whatever. I saw one that said, I hope this email kills us both. And I was like,
yeah,
so
that's totally the vibe.
Or like, I hope this email finds you before I do. Or something like that.
Yes, I love that. Here's the point that I got to by like the end. Again, you know, I'm 6 feet tall. I have middle hitter energy, which I'm going to put that on my epitaph. Yeah. But like with all of these, again, like just the sniping, like the public humiliation, just like the true insults that were flying all the time, we'd be like finishing up a case or something. And I would be like, hey, you know, here's a crazy thought question posed to the room. Like, this is wacky, but I always wondered, what would it be like if we lived in a world where if somebody insults you to your face, then you should be allowed to beat the shit out of them in the street afterwards. And people, and they, you know, like these motherfuckers who were so much smaller than me, who I could take in a fight, like
Mhm.
Yeah.
let the record reflect that, they would just kind of be like, oh, and I'd be like, yeah, oh, anyway, just a crazy thought question. And honestly, people started insulting me to my face less.
Yeah.
And I have no problem with people talking shit behind my back. I never have, and I don't now. That's like, if you have lived through what I have lived through,
Yeah.
which is talking shit to your face, then you're like, I mean, I'm immune.
That's amazing. I love that. Cause yeah, I feel like everyone's always like, do it, but just do it to my face. And you're like, you have a whole different approach. You're like, no, I prefer it. I prefer never to know about it.
Say that have never been insulted to their face.
Oh my,
I'll tell you that right now. They haven't. They're just, yeah, absolutely not.
That's so funny. Oh my gosh.
I love that. Okay, last segment. Can you please tell us about your best job?
Yes. My best job, again, from a sample size of like not that many jobs, I guess, is my current one. I, practice ENT full time, and I work with a team of all women, which I love.
Amazing.
I don't know that I can go back at this point, because it's really like, it's true that when you do finish residency and you go on, like, I mean, I lead the teams that I work on now. And so you can just kind of set the tone. And I feel like in the early days, as I was setting up, I was like, I got to tell you guys, there's really only one thing that is like a deal breaker for me, which is being unprofessionally rude or disrespectful or things like that in the workplace.
It's awesome that for you guys, it doesn't feel like cliquey. Because I think in some environments, if it's all girls, it's all cliquey and competitive.
Yeah.
And then that's why sometimes I think some people prefer to work with men, because sometimes it's not like that.
That's so true, but I will say that like I'm the youngest person on the team. Like I just turned 33, like, and I'm the youngest by a lot. I have worked with, we've had one nurse who I truly love in clinic, and she was in her late 20s, but also like the mom of 2. She had her first kid, I think at 16 or 17. So in terms of like, she's a full ass woman. Like she's a much more mature adult woman than even myself. I guess that's also my tip, is I'd be like, you should be the most immature person at the place you work. And I guess that I've done that now. And that also helps keep us all out of trouble. Cause like, no, I mean, these, I think that there's something to be said about age. Cause if you told me I had to work with like 6 20-year-olds, I might be like, I'm not gonna do
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Of any gender. Like just, I do think that there's like an age element to it, and we have more like veteran healthcare workers.
You're also a podcast host. So does that help with your being the best job right now, is just talking about it and talking to your friends or colleagues and sharing that?
Yes, exactly. Like I just feel like I'm at my best career point right now, but I'm doing a lot of things because I'm writing my book. I'm hosting the podcast. I do some consulting work and things like that and get to travel for work. So this is definitely my best era so far. But I love podcasting. It's helping me get a thicker skin. I feel like, you knew me from the beginning, and I would just be like, I would just turn beet red, and then I'd be like, scratch that, Grace. I'd be like, throw that part out. That's crazy. And then I'd just like cough for like 2 minutes. Again, beet red. Like it's so funny because you can even see TikToks I filmed a year ago versus now. It's not even the Asian flush or anything. I just would be so embarrassed to like be on video that I would turn like purple.
Yeah.
So I think that that's been really good. I went to my hypnotist and I was like, I need a thicker skin. So she hypnotized me for that. And that helps too, honestly. So if you guys are ever like in a pinch and you're like, I cannot get there, it's like, just get hypnotized for
Oh
it.
my gosh. I'm literally writing it down right now. I can think of like 3 things I need to get hypnotized about. That's amazing. Okay, when did you start? I'm sorry, I'm derailing a little bit. When did you get into hypnosis?
After residency.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly. Because I had a lot that, again, I had to deal with and kind of work through. It has like changed my life. I'm a very big proponent of hypnosis for sure.
Yeah. Whoa.
For a variety of things.
Because there's genuinely some things where I was like, I've done DBT therapy, I've done EMDR therapy, but there's like some things where I'm like, I genuinely just need a flip switched, and and so I'm like, I'm so curious about hypnosis. That's interesting.
Well, Frances Mei had her therapist or hypnosis therapist, Mei Lease, on an episode, and they do a short hypnosis exercise. Yeah.
What
so
an
go
amazing
listen to that.
Yeah, that's like the most interesting episode. That's awesome. Yeah, I will find that. Or if you can send it to me.
Yes,
yeah, I was clever. That's awesome. That's great.
Can you share a little bit about what Promising Young Surgeon is about?
Sure. Well, again, I feel like it could just as well be titled like subtitle Maximum Rage, but not these later seasons. I will say that Promising Young Surgeon, it is meant to be a vehicle for these important conversations that nobody has in healthcare. Certainly, there's so much in the hidden curriculum of medicine, in the hidden curriculum of surgery. There's so much we don't talk about. There's so much trauma that like physicians and surgeons experience over their decade plus of training that they just squash down and kind of try to move on with their lives, whether they do that well or not. I will say that I myself have seen many people 5 years after residency, 10 years after residency, 15. If you get into a conversation with them, then they start crying. So again, personally, I will tell you, with a very vested interest in not being that person. Like, I don't want to be in my 40s still dealing with a lot of unprocessed stuff from back then. So I've been very open about my own journey. We bring on a lot of people who are smarter than me about how to like deal in an effective and healthy way. Because it's not just about like, well, what's going to be healthy? Also kind of an unsexy way to sell it. But here is the spin zone, which is what's going to be effective. Because when you start to think about your career, your job, things like that as a game, it becomes, for me, or at least for people like me, it becomes like a fun thing. Like, I do like to win games. So, like, let's kind of strategize and be the most effective person that I can be. I think that that's like really what is so valuable about it. And then the other thing I'll say, just to kind of hit home how much people don't talk about this, I have reporters contact me occasionally in my capacity as founder of like Rethinking Residency and then also the podcast Promising Young Surgeon to comment on these stories about like resident physician burnout, working conditions, suicide. And, so I'll often like take a conversation, things like that. And one person told me recently from a major publication, they were like, yeah, I have been interviewing attendings who have been out of residency for 10 years, and they still are not willing to put their name on it. They're all interviewed under condition of anonymity because they feel like it might like harm their career in some way to like be honest or talk to me on the record about these things. And again, that's kind of embarrassing for their life and soul. Like, that was never going to be me. I kind of took 6 months after residency to just be a zombie. And then I was like, yeah, that was bad. Like, and not unique to me. Yeah. Like that, a lot of these things are not at all specific to my department, my institution, or me. So I was like, we're going to talk about it.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's such a unique premise, I think, and the pod, at least like in my repertoire. Where can people find you, your website, your Instagram?
Yeah, so on Instagram, I'm at francesmei.md and at Rethinking Residency. And I have a website, rethinkingresidency.com, as well as francesmei.com. francesmei.com is a trip. Colin made it for me as like a gift. And it's like, yeah, it's awesome. It brings a little bit of crazy energy, but it's good.
I love that.
It's fun. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight and bringing a new light to Minimum Rage.
It was. I feel like we could talk to you. I feel like we just scratched the surface on some things. You were like a fount of experience and knowledge, and it was awesome to get to talk to you.
Thank you. It was so fun chatting with you guys. I've been like begging Grace to come on for like this whole time, and she's
Honestly,
been keeping me at arm's distance.
I was so scared to have you on. I don't know why. Because you're literally like the most important profession I think that we've had on here.
Yeah.
No offense
Oh,
to everyone
shit.
else.
No.
but
Yeah, altar serving is a big deal. People aren't going to get their shit if you don't. They're not going to experience the Catholic Mass correctly if you don't altar serve them correctly.